He used to think he had everything. But this morning, as he walked into the company lobby, Ethan Carter, CEO of the city's largest corporation, froze. On the cold marble floor, a woman was bent over, scrubbing. Her worn-out gray uniform couldn't hide her thin frame, her shoulders trembling slightly from exhaustion. Ethan couldn't look away. Because that woman was Naomi Walker, his childhood first love. The girl he once promised to protect forever. All these years he built a billion-dollar empire, reached the pinnacle of power, but not a second passed that he forgot those brown eyes. And now she was right in front of him, rag in hand, head bowed low, not noticing the man standing just steps away. Ethan gripped his briefcase tightly, his heart pounding wildly. He had never felt fear like this, and he didn't know. This encounter would change everything. Ethan stood frozen in the lobby, ignoring the employees bowing as he walked past. His mind was filled only with the image of Naomi scrubbing the floor, her small hands clutching the rag, her bony knuckles visible under the harsh white light. 20 years ago, that little girl used to sit beside him under the old oak tree, giggling as he chased butterflies for her. Now everything had changed. Ethan tightened his grip on his bag, his chest burning. He wondered what had turned the cheerful girl of the past into this silent woman, bowing her head. His steps felt heavy, but his gaze stayed glued to Naomi. She looked up and accidentally met his eyes. For a fleeting moment, their eyes locked. Naomi froze, her breath caught in her chest. Then she lowered her head and continued scrubbing the floor, avoiding his gaze. Ethan felt his heart shatter into tiny pieces. Ethan tried to calm himself as he stepped into the private elevator leading straight to the top floor, but the image of Naomi kneeling, scrubbing the floor, clung to his mind. The elevator doors closed, reflecting his face, the powerful CEO in a perfect gray suit wearing an expensive tie, but his eyes were empty. He closed them and memories came flooding back. At 16, he had promised Naomi, "When I grow up, I'll build you a beautiful house so you'll never have to suffer." That promise had driven him through years of climbing to the top, but now, having it all, he realized he had lost the most important thing. The elevator stopped, the doors opened, and his assistant bowed, but Ethan didn't respond. Only one question echoed in his mind. "Naomi, what have you gone through all these years without me?" Naomi bent down, scrubbing the dirty shoe marks on the icy marble floor. Each time her hands touched the water, her fingers went numb from the cold. Shiny leather shoes passed in front of her, but she didn't look up. She had learned to bow her head, to stay silent, to remain invisible. Inside, a bitter voice whispered, "This is his empire, and me? I'm just a floor cleaner." 15 years ago, Naomi had dreams too. Small dreams of owning a little bookstore on the corner where she could read to children every afternoon, but then her mother fell gravely ill. Tuition fees became hospital bills. Dreams shattered, swept away by reality. Naomi clenched the rag, tears threatening to fall, but she swallowed them back. She told herself, "Don't cry, you still have to survive." Ethan entered the meeting room, the air thick with power and calculation. The director stood to greet him, but his eyes remained empty. As they presented the quarterly revenue reports, his mind drifted back to those faraway days. He remembered Naomi's laughter, her brown eyes sparkling in the afternoon sun. She once said, "I don't need anything but you." Back then, Ethan believed that if he succeeded, she would be happy. But now he realized he was wrong. The CFO's voice cut into his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. Ethan looked around. Every face waited for his decision, but he didn't care. There was only one thought in his mind. I have to see her again. I have to know why the girl I loved became a janitor in my company. After the meeting, Ethan returned to his spacious office on the top floor. Soft golden light bathed the luxurious furnishings, but he felt no warmth. He stood before the large glass window looking down at the tiny streets below. All these years he had climbed so high, so far, so no one could ever hurt him again. But now, at the peak of power, he felt utterly alone. The image of Naomi kneeling on the floor haunted him, squeezing his heart tight. He remembered clearly the day she smiled brightly, slipping a grass-woven bracelet into his hand, whispering, "Never forget me." Ethan clenched his fingers. He wondered, "Do you still remember me, Naomi? Or have all your memories of me died long ago?" Naomi set the mop aside and stretched her aching back. She looked around the grand lobby. Everything sparkled under the crystal chandeliers, so extravagantly different from her mold-stained rented room. A young coworker approached and whispered, "Did you see the CEO? He's as handsome as a Hollywood star." Naomi gave a faint smile and said nothing. In her heart, the name Ethan Carter felt both distant and painfully close. She told herself, "Don't think about him anymore. Someone like him lives in the sky. I'm just dirt." She bent down to scrub a stubborn stain near the elevator. The icy floor cleaner seeped through her torn gloves, numbing her fingertips, but this pain was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. The elevator doors slid open. Ethan stepped out, his stride urgent. He intended to walk straight across the lobby, but his eyes stopped. Naomi was kneeling before him, scrubbing spilled coffee. Her hair fell forward, hiding half her face. Ethan stood frozen. All surrounding sounds faded. Only his ragged breaths thundered in his chest. Naomi felt someone staring at her. She looked up. Their eyes met. In that moment, all memories came rushing back. Afternoons running wild in the fields, nights sitting under the moon as he read old books to her. Her lips trembled. But a second later, Naomi lowered her head. Her voice was hoarse, emotionless. "I'm sorry. I'll clean this up quickly." Ethan felt his heart clench painfully, as if crushed. Ethan bent down, his voice rough. "Naomi, it's you, isn't it?" She looked up, her dark brown eyes filled with surprise, then instantly dimmed. Naomi stood up, quickly wiping her hands on her apron. Her gaze met his directly, but there was no warmth like before. "I'm sorry. I think you've mistaken me for someone else." Ethan froze. She turned away, continuing to scrub the floor, her hands trembling slightly, though her voice remained calm. He saw the calluses on her fingers, tiny cracks etched into her dry skin. His heart felt like it was being slashed open. Ethan wanted to speak, to call her name once more. But his throat tightened. He could only stand there silently, watching the woman he once loved most coldly walk away as if he had never existed. Naomi dragged the mop bucket to another area, not daring to look back. Her heart pounded wildly, her breathing heavy. She knew Ethan's eyes still followed her every step. She thought she was strong enough to face him. But in that moment when his eyes met hers, not with pity but with true pain, all her defenses nearly crumbled. Ethan stood still, his hand gripping his briefcase strap until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to run to her, pull her into his arms, ask her what she had been through, why she had ended up like this. But dozens of employees were watching. He knew if he approached now, he would shatter her last bit of pride. Ethan took a deep breath and told himself, "Naomi, I won't let you disappear from my life ever again." Ethan returned to his office, slamming the door shut behind him. He loosened his tie, threw his briefcase onto the desk, and collapsed into his chair. In his heart, a trembling voice kept echoing, "Naomi, why did you end up like this?" He rested his elbows on the table, burying his tired face in his hands. He remembered so clearly, little Naomi, with her soft brown hair always tied to the side, who loved to laugh, loved to read books, loved listening to his stories about tall buildings. When he left that poor town to take his university scholarship, he had promised, "Wait for me. When I succeed, I'll come back for you." But he never returned. All these years, he only knew how to move forward, making money, building an empire, until there was no time left to remember her. And now, seeing Naomi again, his heart suddenly realized he had lost the most important thing in his life. Naomi gathered her cleaning supplies onto the cart and pushed it towards the supply room at the end of the hallway. Each step felt as heavy as lead. Inside the storage room, she sank down onto the floor, leaning against a shelf, closing her eyes and breathing heavily. The image of Ethan looking at her just now kept flashing in her mind, so clear it hurt. His eyes were still the same, deep and sincere, but she couldn't let herself soften. "He belongs to another world. I've already learned how to live without him." She placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heart pounding wildly. Back then, when she received the news that Ethan had gotten a scholarship out of town, she smiled and congratulated him. That night, she sat alone under the old oak tree, crying until dawn. Naomi opened her eyes, taking a deep breath. Don't be weak. I still have the night shift to finish." Ethan sat silently in his office, the yellow light casting shadows over his sorrowful face. He opened a desk drawer and took out a small wooden box. Inside lay a grass ring, now dry, fragile, and brittle with time. He had kept it in his wallet during the early years of his career, as a reminder of the little girl who once believed in him unconditionally. Ethan vividly remembered that day, Naomi sitting under the oak tree, weaving the grass into a ring and giggling, "This is my engagement ring for you. You have to keep it forever." He had only laughed and patted her head then, but that night he secretly tucked it into his wallet and carried it with him through the journey away from home, away from her. Ethan closed his eyes, fingers tightening around this brittle grass ring. In his heart, a silent vow echoed, "Naomi, I will never let you bow your head again. I owe you my whole life." Naomi was mopping the third-floor hallway when the sharp click of high heels echoed behind her. A beautiful woman approached with confident strides, dressed in a tight black dress, crimson lips, and cold, sharp eyes. It was Claire Carter, the PR director and the second most powerful person in the company after Ethan. Claire stopped, looking Naomi up and down, her lips curling into a disdainful smirk. "You're the new janitor, huh? I heard today Ethan—" "Oh no, Mr. Carter came down to the lobby and stared at you for quite a while." Naomi bowed her head, gripping the mop tightly. Claire stepped closer, whispering icily in her ear, "Listen, don't think just because he looked at you, you can start dreaming. People like you, will always be kneeling beneath others." Naomi raised her head, looking straight into those arrogant eyes. Her heart ached, but her gaze remained calm. "I'm not dreaming. I'm just doing my job." "Assez." Claire scoffed and turned away, leaving behind the lingering scent of expensive perfume in the air. Naomi stood still for a long moment, Claire's perfume still hanging heavy in the air, making her head ache. She bent down to continue mopping, but her hands were trembling. Every word Claire said felt like a knife slicing into old wounds that had never healed. "We'll always be kneeling beneath others." For a moment she felt so small, so pitiful, but then memories of the past returned. She remembered Ethan once holding her hand tightly under the oak tree, looking straight into her eyes and saying, "Naomi, you never have to bow to anyone, I promise." Hot tears threatened to fall, but Naomi bit her lip to hold them back. She took a deep breath and continued scrubbing the stains on the floor, each stroke strong and firm. "I've survived all these years without anyone's promises, and I'll keep going like this." But deep inside her heart, a dull pain grew stronger, like an undercurrent ready to swallow everything. Ethan stepped out of the elevator just in time to see Claire walking away, her posture radiating arrogance. He frowned, his eyes quickly finding Naomi, who was bent over mopping the floor. She didn't notice him watching. Ethan clenched his fists. He had heard every word Claire said. His blood boiled with anger. He walked over, his deep, rough voice ringing out, "Naomi!" She flinched and looked up. Their eyes met. In hers he saw exhaustion, helplessness, and a flicker of quiet strength. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice calm. "What did she say to you?" Naomi shook her head and bowed down to continue mopping. "Nothing, Mr. Carter. I'm just a janitor. I have work to do." Her words felt like a blade twisting into Ethan's heart. He wanted to hold her, to scream that she wasn't just a janitor, she was his whole world. But he just stood there, watching her small back tremble from exhaustion and pride being trampled. Naomi pushed the cleaning cart back into the supply room, closed the door, and leaned against it, breathing heavily. Her hands were trembling, her fingers swollen and red from the cold and cleaning chemicals. She clenched her fists, trying to suppress the sob rising in her throat. "I can't cry. I can't cry." But the image of Ethan looking at her earlier haunted her, his eyes filled with worry and pain. She told herself, "Don't be weak, Naomi. He's a CEO. I'm just a janitor." She opened the cabinet, took out an old bottle of water, and took a small sip. The cheap cold water soothed her throat a little. Naomi gave a faint, self-deprecating smile. "Just survived today. Tomorrow will come, too." But when she closed her eyes, she still saw Ethan's face, the man who once promised she would never have to cry. And now, as he ruled an empire while she remained an invisible janitor, tears silently fell onto her calloused hands. Ethan sat in his office, staring blankly at his laptop screen. His mind was empty. He remembered that last afternoon in their small town. Naomi had chased after the bus he was on, her brown hair flying wildly in the wind. She kept running, calling his name through subs. "Ethan! Don't go! Don't leave me behind!" But the bus kept moving, carrying him away from her, away from the sweet world of his childhood. He had told himself, "Just a few years. When I succeed, I'll come back and take her with me." But a few years turned into 20. Ethan closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the chair. "Naomi, I've made you wait too long, and now I don't know how to make up for all those lost years." A silent tear fell, soaking into the expensive dress shirt he wore. Naomi changed into her night shift uniform and stepped out of the supply room to start her cleaning rounds. The hallway was deserted, lit only by dim yellow lights casting her long shadow across the cold tile floor. She pulled her cleaning cart, each step echoing with the sad squeak of its wheels. Claire's words from earlier rang in her head. "People like you will always be kneeling beneath others." Naomi bit her lip hard. "It's true. I have no right to dream. I just need this job, next month's rent, my online class tuition, and enough strength to wake up tomorrow." She paused, glancing out the large window of the building. Outside, the city glowed with skyscrapers, cars moving like tiny specks of light. Naomi gripped the mop tightly. "Ethan, I'm no longer that naive little girl. I don't need your pity." But deep in her heart, another voice whispered, I still miss you so much. Ethan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the top floor, gazing down at the city lit up for the night. Rows of buildings, endless traffic, everything looked so small beneath him. But he felt no triumph. In his mind, he only saw Naomi, head bowed as she scrubbed the floor, her thin hands trembling, hiding all emotions. He wondered over these 20 years, how had she lived? Who was there for her when she was sick? Who wiped her tears when she was desperate? Ethan clenched his fists so tight his nails dug into his palms. I was wrong. Money, power, none of it matters without her. He turned and called his assistant. His voice was deep and cold, but his eyes shone with determination. Cancel all my appointments tonight. I have something more important to do. In Ethan's heart, only one thought remained. Naomi, even if it's too late, I will find a way to make it up to you. Naomi pushed her cleaning cart down the long, silent hallway, the wheels echoing in the emptiness. She stopped in front of the large conference room where the lights were still on, and dim figures moved inside, packing up documents. The door opened, and Ethan walked out. They came face to face. For a moment, neither spoke. His eyes stopped on her hands gripping the mop handle, her bony knuckles protruding. Naomi, we need to talk. His voice was deep and hoarse, almost pleading. Naomi lowered her gaze, avoiding his eyes. I'm sorry, I still have work to do. She tried to step to the right, but Ethan reached out, blocking her path. His warm breath brushed lightly against her forehead. Just 5 minutes, please? Naomi's heart tightened. Memories came flooding back, but she swallowed them down, her voice dry. Please don't make this difficult for me. I'm just a janitor here. You're the CEA. There's nothing for us to talk about. Ethan looked at Naomi. Her eyes were dry, but her voice trembled. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the pain stabbing his chest. You're not just a janitor, you're... He paused. Naomi looked up, her gaze icy. I'm what, Mr. Carter? Your first love? It's been 20 years. I'm no longer that little girl, and you're no longer that poor boy. Ethan froze. Naomi stepped around him, pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway. He turned to watch her small figure disappear into the distance. The faint smell of floor cleaner lingered in the air, stinging his nose. Ethan tilted his head back, closing his eyes, wondering, Naomi, what do I have to do for you to look at me like you used to just once more? He felt powerless. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter, the man who held an entire empire in his hands, couldn't change the heart of a woman. Naomi pushed her cart into the supply room, closed the door, and leaned against it, gasping for breath. Her whole body trembled with exhaustion, and with Ethan's words still ringing in her ears. You're not just a janitor, you're... She clamped a hand over her mouth to stop a sob from escaping. Her heart hurt so much she could hardly breathe. The image of 16-year-old Ethan flashed vividly in her mind. The boy, wearing an old t-shirt, his hands stained with white paint, smiling brightly as he finished the landscape painting he made for her. Naomi, one day I'll make enough money to paint you an entire gallery, okay? She had believed those words. Believed them so deeply that just thinking about them gave her the courage to endure her mother's illness and countless exhausting nights of working part-time. But in the end, she was left alone. Naomi clutched her chest, whispering through tears, Ethan, please. Don't make me remember again. I already lost you once. I'm not strong enough to lose you again. Ethan sat silently in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. In front of him was the iron gate leading into an old workers' housing complex where Naomi now lived. He had spent the entire afternoon having her address investigated, ignoring his assistant's advice that it was unnecessary. The dim streetlights shone down on the row of shabby rooms. He saw Naomi get out of a taxi, carrying a small food bag, her walk weary, shoulders slumped beneath her thin trim coat. Ethan's heart clenched. This woman had once been his whole world. Now she trudged alone through the cold night, as if life had never given her anything to lean on. Ethan opened the car door, wanting to call out her name, but his voice stuck in his throat. All he could do was stand there, watching Naomi enter her dark room, the door closing, leaving him behind in the freezing night. Naomi, please don't push me away anymore. I can't bear to lose you again. Naomi flicked the light switch, and her 12-square-meter room lit up under the dim yellow bulb. She placed the food bag on the old wooden table, took off her coat and hung it on a hook, then sat heavily on the edge of her bed. The sunken mattress creaked with a dry crack. She opened the lunchbox. The smell of cold, fried eggs rose up. Naomi picked up her chopsticks, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She set them down and buried her face in her hands, tears falling and soaking her shirt. Her mind was filled with Ethan's face, the way he looked at her that afternoon, eyes full of pain she didn't dare believe. Why did you come back? Why are you looking at me like that? Do you know how long it took me to stop thinking about you? Naomi buried her head on the table, sobs breaking the silence of the small room, mixing with the sound of night winds whistling through the rusty window frame. Ethan stayed in his car until late at night, the dim streetlight casting a sickly glow on his tired face. His phone rang, his assistant calling. "Sir, tomorrow you have a board meeting at 9 a.m. and the Japanese investors signing at 11 a.m. Ethan closed his eyes, cutting him off. "Cancel everything." His assistant was stunned. "But sir, this is a major project." Ethan's voice was hoarse but firm. "I said cancel." He hung up and leaned back against his seat. Outside, the night wind rustled through the dry trees, whispering like trees. Ethan looked up at Naomi's small window, now dark. In his heart, an icy emptiness spread. "I don't need the project, I don't need fame. I don't need money, I only need you to—" "Naomi." He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his eyes flashing with determination. "Tomorrow I will make you face me. Even if you hate me, I will not let you disappear again." The next morning, Naomi left her tiny room early, dragging her old cleaning supplies bag behind her. The dawn mist chilled her face, making her shiver. She walked to the bus stop, blending into the crowd of hurried workers. On the bus, Naomi leaned her head against the fogged window, closing her eyes to snatch a few minutes of sleep before her 12-hour cleaning shift. But when she arrived at the company lobby, the atmosphere was different. All the employees lined up on either side of the walkway, whispering. Naomi lowered her head, hurrying forward, but a colleague whispered, "Naomi, the CEO is looking for you." Her heart clenched. She looked up and saw Ethan standing in front of the elevator. Today he wore a black suit, gray tie, his face cold but his eyes filled with only one thing: pain and longing. Ethan looked straight into her eyes, his deep voice warm yet firm. "Naomi, come to my office now. We need to talk." The entire lobby fell silent, and all she could hear was her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Naomi stood frozen. All eyes turned to her, curious, judgmental, envious. Ethan continued to stare without blinking, his gaze commanding, though his voice trembled slightly. "Come with me." She gripped her mop handle tighter, her whole body trembling. I still have work to do." Ethan stepped forward, only half a step away from her. His warm breath brushed her cold cheek. "This job, it doesn't suit you." Naomi looked up, her brown eyes brimming with tears, her voice hoarse. "Don't say that! You have no right to decide my life anymore." Ethan closed his eyes, trying to control the trembling in his chest. He opened them, looking deep into her eyes, filled with hatred and pain, and whispered, "Naomi, if you don't come with me today, I'll stand here all day, I swear." The lobby fell completely silent, leaving only the chaotic beating of their hearts echoing in the suffocating stillness. Naomi gripped the mop so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked around. Every employee was watching. Shame, fear, hurt, and a flicker of weakness swirled chaotically inside her. Finally, she took a deep breath and set the mop aside. "Fine. 5 minutes. I'll give you only 5 minutes." Ethan exhaled in relief, his eyes flickering with pain and hope. He turned and strode towards the elevator, glancing back to gesture at her. "Come." Naomi bowed her head and followed, leaving behind a sea of whispers in the lobby. The elevator doors closed. In the cramped space, there were only the two of them. Ethan didn't look at her. His clenched hand showed bulging veins. Naomi stood beside him, her whole body tense, her heart racing. In that moment, they both heard each other's ragged breaths, heavy with all the questions left unanswered after 20 years apart. The elevator doors opened, and Ethan walked quickly to his large CEO office, Naomi silently following behind. When the glass doors closed, she stood near the entrance, keeping a safe distance. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes red but his voice deep and steady. "How long have you been living like this?" Naomi didn't answer, only looked straight at him. Her gaze was as hard as thin ice covering a winter lake. Ethan took a deep breath, his voice cracking. "I'm not asking to pity you. I just want to know. How did it end up like this? You used to have dreams." Naomi let out a short, bitter laugh, a tear suddenly rolling down her cheek. "Dreams? They disappeared when you did, Ethan. You promised you'd come back, but you didn't. I had to learn how to live without you, and I did. Don't ruin it." Ethan froze, the world around him spinning. His heart clenched so tight he had to grip the edge of the table to keep from collapsing in front of her. Naomi quickly wiped away her tears, her voice trembling but her eyes remained resolute. "Say it, Ethan." Why did you call me up here? To fire me? To offer me another job out of pity? Or just to remind me how lowly I am?" Ethan stepped forward, his eyes filled with despair. "No, Naomi, I don't pity you. I miss you. I've never stopped missing you." Naomi let out a bitter laugh. Don't say these words. You're a CEO. I'm a janitor. We have nothing left to say." Ethan gripped her shoulders, his voice breaking. "I know I'm a CEO, but I'm also your Ethan. The boy who used to ride that old bicycle with you through the rice fields, remember?" Tears streamed down Naomi's face, but she shook her head, prying his hands off. "That boy is dead, Ethan. Just like the little Naomi from back then. She's dead, too." She turned and walked quickly to the door, leaving Ethan standing frozen, his arms hanging limply, his heart so heavy he could barely breathe. Naomi ran out of the office, her tears blurring her vision. She rushed into the elevator, pressing the close button repeatedly, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. When the doors finally closed, she leaned back against the cold steel wall, clamping her hand over her mouth to stifle her sobs. Ethan's pained eyes kept flashing in her mind, making her chest tighten in agony. Why did you come back? Why did you make me remember? Make me hurt like this? The elevator doors opened, and Naomi stumbled out, running back to the supply room. She collapsed onto the floor, hugging her knees tightly. Tears fell onto the icy tiles beneath her. "I've lived all these years without you. I will keep living. I must keep living." But deep inside, her heart screamed in silent despair. "I still love you, Ethan. I love you so much it hurts to breathe." Ethan stood silent in the empty office, the echo of the closing door tearing through his chest. He slumped down into his chair, elbows on the desk, gripping his hair tightly. Naomi's sobbing words replayed in his head. "That boy is dead! Just like the little Naomi from back then! She's dead, too." His heart throbbed painfully. For 20 years he thought he had everything. Money, power, fame. But now, seeing that girl suffer, broken and alone, he realized he had nothing. Ethan raised his head, his bloodshot eyes filled with fierce determination. "Naomi, you can hate me, curse me, but I will not let you live this life for one more day. I swear I will drag you out of that darkness no matter how much you despise me." He reached for his phone, his voice deep and hoarse but hard as steel. "Call Claire up. I need her here immediately." Claire walked into the office, her high heels clicking crisply. She wore a fitted black suit, her hair pulled into a high bun, lips painted crimson. Her cold eyes swept over Ethan, noting his unusually grim expression. "You called for me?" Ethan looked up, his bloodshot eyes making Claire pause. "I want you to arrange for Naomi Walker to transfer to the administration office starting next week. Temporary administrative assistant. Triple her current salary." Claire raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Naomi Walker, the lobby janitor? Ethan, are you turning this company into a charity?" Ethan slammed his hand down on the table, his eyes flashing with anger. "That's an order, Claire. No arguments." Claire narrowed her eyes, silent for a few seconds, before letting out a cold laugh. "Very well, but remember, someone like her will never belong in this world." Ethan stared straight into her eyes, his voice low and icy as steel. "You're wrong. This world was never worthy of her." Claire froze, speechless for the first time. Naomi was mopping the first-floor hallway when her supervisor called her to HR. She quickly wiped her hands on her apron, her heart racing. Stepping into the room, she saw Claire sitting there, perfectly made up, her face beautiful but eyes cold as ice. "Sit down." Naomi quietly sat in the chair opposite, clutching the hem of her uniform. Claire flipped open the file on her desk, her voice flat. "Starting next week, you will transfer to the administration department as a temporary assistant. Your salary will triple." Naomi froze. She looked up, her eyes wide with shock. "Me as an assistant?" Claire looked at her with disdain, the corner of her mouth curling into a smirk. "Yes, I don't know what he's thinking. But remember, just because you're paid more doesn't mean you have value. You're just a toy. That can be thrown away at any time." Naomi clenched her hands, her trembling lips pressed tightly together. Her heart pounded with humiliation, fear, and an unnamed sorrow. Named as an unknown. Naomi walked out of HR, her mind spinning. She moved like a sleepwalker, not even noticing the whispers of coworkers as she left Claire's office. Back in the supply room, she collapsed onto the old plastic chair, her hands shaking violently. "Administrative assistant, triple the pay. But why?" She wiped away the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Ethan, what are you doing? Do you think this will help me, or are you just trying to ease your guilt? Naomi let out a strangled laugh, her voice echoing in the cramped, chemical-scented room. You don't understand anything. I don't need you to save me. I just needed you to keep your promise. You said you'd come back, but you didn't, so now I don't need anything from you anymore. But her heart whispered, weak and aching. I don't need you, but I still want you. Ethan sat in the meeting room, a row of senior directors presenting a new project in front of him, but every word on the slides blurred meaninglessly. His mind was filled only with Naomi, her tear-stained eyes, her trembling voice saying, You have no right to decide my life anymore. His heart ached with every beat. His assistant leaned down to whisper, Sir, Claire has completed the paperwork to transfer Naomi Walker to administration. She starts next week. Ethan nodded slightly, his voice deep and hoarse. Good. And cancel the meeting with Shinoda Corporation this afternoon. I have something more important. The assistant paused in surprise, but only replied quietly, Yes, sir. Ethan stood up, removing his tie and unbuttoning the top of his shirt, his voice strong though his eyes were filled with pain. This meeting is over. I have personal matters. The directors exchanged bewildered looks. Never before had Ethan Carter left a meeting mid-session, but he didn't care, because right now his entire world was Naomi. Naomi sat quietly in the supply room, the flickering fluorescent light casting her long shadow across the tiled floor. She looked at her calloused hands, her broken nails roughened by cleaning chemicals, and let out a small laugh. Administrative assistant. It sounds so luxurious. Do I even deserve it? Her old phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Come to the back gate. I'm waiting. Naomi read it, her heart tightening. She didn't need to see the name to know who it was. She put the phone back in her pocket, took a few deep breaths, then stood up. Her slow steps carried her down the long hallway, each fluorescent bulb flicking off behind her as if darkness were chasing her. At the back gate, the evening wind blew her hair wildly. Ethan stood there, leaning against his car, no suit, no tie, just a rolled-up white shirt, his face tired but his eyes warm as he saw her. Naomi stood still, trying to keep her voice calm. What do you want now, Ethan? But inside, her racing heart betrayed all the coldness on her face. Ethan stepped closer, the evening breeze ruffling his hair. He stopped just half a step away from Naomi, looking deeply into her guarded brown eyes. I don't want anything. I just want you to have dinner with me. Naomi let out a trembling, bitter laugh. Dinner? Who do you think you are, a prince bestowing a meal on a worthless peasant? Ethan shook his head slightly, his voice dropping low, choked with emotion. Naomi, I just want to sit in front of you, to watch you eat, to hear you speak, even just for an hour. It's enough for me to know you're still alive in this world. Tears threatened to fall, but Naomi lifted her head, forcing them back. I don't need your concern. I've lived 20 years without you, and I'm fine. Ethan pressed his lips together, his eyes reddening. He raised his hand, about to touch her cheek, but stopped midair, his voice hoarse. You call this fine, Naomi? Mopping floors for 12 hours, eating cold food, sleeping in a room dripping with rainwater? You call that fine? Naomi clenched her fists, silent tears dripping onto the cold cement ground. Naomi turned her face away, hiding the tears streaming down her cheeks. Her voice was hoarse, trembling. Stop it, Ethan! You have no right to pity me! Ethan clenched his fists so tight his nails dug into his palms painfully. He took a deep breath, his voice deep and hoarse, but steady. I'm not pitying you. I just can't stand watching you live like this. Naomi laughed, a bitter, broken sound. So what will you do? Give me money, buy me a house, a better job, and then what, Ethan? What will I be in your perfect life? Ethan stepped even closer, his eyes shining with pain and fierce determination. You will be the only woman I love, the reason I've worked so hard for 20 years. You are my breath, my heart, my everything. Naomi clenched her fists tighter, her whole body shaking violently. Inside her, the walls she had built over 20 years began to crack and crumble, under his raspy voice and tear-filled eyes. Naomi closed her eyes, tears streaming down uncontrollably. Her voice came out soft, like a whisper carried by the evening breeze. Don't say those words, Ethan. I'm so scared. Scared you'll disappear again. Scared that one day I'll wake up and realize it was all just a dream. Ethan raised his hand, and this time he gently touched her cheek. His fingers trembled as he felt the warm dampness of her tears. I'm not a dream, Naomi. I'm here, real, and I'm not going anywhere. I swear on everything I have. Naomi opened her eyes, looking straight at him. In those tear-filled brown eyes were pain, fear, love that never faded. but also doubt tearing her apart. She shook her head, her voice breaking. I don't believe you. I can't believe anymore. When you left last time, a part of me died. Ethan cupped her cheek softly, his voice breaking into a plea. Then let me bring you back to life, Naomi. Please don't push me away. Don't leave me ever again. The evening wind blew hard, carrying her falling tears to shatter on the cold gray cement under the dim twilight sky. Naomi stepped back slightly, escaping his trembling hand. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, taking a deep breath to steady her voice. I have to go. Don't look for me again, Ethan. Please. She turned and walked quickly toward the small alley leading to the main road. Ethan stood frozen, arms hanging limp, his entire body shaking with helplessness. He watched her small figure walking away, his lips moving silently. Naomi, please. But Naomi didn't look back. She kept walking, each step heavy, her tears soaking the front of her janitor uniform. Every step felt like she was crushing her own heart, the pain so intense it numbed her. Don't turn back. Don't turn back. If I turn back, I won't be able to leave him again. She gripped her bag strap tighter, walking faster, blending into the stream of workers heading home, leaving behind the most powerful man in the city standing motionless under the fading golden sunset. Ethan stood there for a long time, letting the evening wind whip cold against his thin shirt. He closed his eyes, his head bowed low, broad shoulders trembling slightly. Naomi's words echoed in his heart like a blade slicing straight through. When you left last time, a part of me died. He opened his eyes, lifting his gaze to the darkening purple scene covering the city. Streetlights flickered on, casting their pale yellow glow on his hollow face. Ethan pulled out his phone, his voice hoarse as he spoke to his assistant. Cancel all appointments tonight. Book me a ticket to Cedar Springs. The earliest flight tomorrow morning. His assistant sounded surprised. Sir, there's the Singapore Investment Board meeting. Ethan closed his eyes, speaking firmly. Cancel it. I need to go home. Immediately. He hung up, his eyes glinting with unwavering determination. If you don't believe me, I'll make you believe. I'll show you. Everything I've done these past 20 years was to come back and find you. The night wind blew through his messy hair, but inside his heart, there was no more trembling, only a fierce determination that nothing could extinguish. The next morning, Naomi woke up with puffy eyes. She looked at herself in the mirror of her small room, seeing her tired face, her skin darkened by sun and hard work. I have to forget him. I have to keep living, she whispered to herself, then put on her apron, tied her messy hair back neatly, and carried her cleaning supplies bag to the bus stop. At the same time, Ethan sat in first class on his flight to Cedar Springs. He leaned back in his seat, eyes half closed as memories replayed in his mind. Afternoons riding bikes together along rice fields. Naomi sitting behind him, holding him tightly, laughing loudly into the wind. Her voice echoed warmly and clearly in his mind. One day you'll be a famous artist. I'll hang your paintings all over our house. Ethan opened his eyes, his gaze sharp and cold. Naomi, you're right. That boy from back then is dead. But today I will bury Ethan Carter, the CEO, and become Ethan. Your boy from back then again, I swear. Outside the window, the morning sun cast golden light over the vast fields below, marking the start of a new day, and of his journey to win back the only woman he ever loved. Naomi bowed her head as she mopped the third-floor hallway, not even bothering to look up when high heels clicked past her. Claire stopped, her cold voice echoing. Get ready! Next week you'll start as an administrative assistant. Don't think it's a privilege. It only shows how much he pities you. Naomi said nothing. Her hands steadily scrubbing the marble floor, Claire bent down, whispering near her ear. Don't think he really cares. Someone like Ethan Carter will never stay with someone like you. You're just a passing amusement. Naomi looked up, her brown eyes brimming with tears but her gaze unwavering. You don't need to remind me. I know my place. Claire scoffed and walked away, her heels echoing down the empty hall. Naomi bowed her head, tears falling onto the polished floor. Yes, I know. He is the sky. I am just the dirt beneath his feet. But deep within, a small voice whispered, raspy and desperate, even as dirt, I still love him. That evening, Naomi finished her shift late. She changed clothes, put on her old, worn sweater, and quietly left the building. The sky was dark, and the cold night wind made her shiver. As she stepped out the gate, she froze. A black SUV was parked right in front of her. The car door opened, and Claire stepped out, her heels tapping lightly on the pavement. Get in. Her voice was icy. Naomi shook her head, stepping back. I'm not going anywhere. Claire smirked coldly. Don't be stupid. Ethan isn't here, but I have something you need to see. Naomi stood still for a few seconds, her heart pounding. Finally, she stepped into the car. Claire sat beside her, signaling the driver to go. The SUV glided silently through the brightly lit streets like a massive shadow swallowing Naomi whole. Unease rose violently within her. What is she planning, and what is it she wants to show me? Outside the window, the city glittered beautifully at night. But to Naomi, darkness was closing in around her heart, freezing cold. The SUV stopped in front of a luxurious building. Claire stepped out first, turning back to look at Naomi with cold eyes. Follow me. Naomi swallowed hard and followed her through a marble-tiled lobby into a glass elevator that reflected her pale, tired face. When the doors opened, Claire led Naomi into a spacious conference room with high ceilings and warm yellow lights shining over a long walnut table. On the table was a thick file. Claire sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, her voice sharp as a blade. Open it! Naomi's hands trembled as she opened the file. Before her were countless photos of Ethan standing beside beautiful women, at galas, on red carpets, at elegant dinners. They smiled brightly, holding his arm, and Ethan looked at them with such gentle eyes it tore at her heart. Naomi felt like someone was crushing her chest. She looked up, her voice shaking. Why are you showing me these? Claire leaned back, a cold smile spreading across her lips. To remind you of one truth. Ethan Carter never loves anyone except power and fame. And if he ever notices you, you're nothing but a cheap toy. Naomi looked down at the photos, her small shoulders trembling violently. Inside her, old scars split open, bleeding into an unbearable pain that stole her breath away. Naomi closed the file and set it down, her hands trembling so hard her knuckles turned white. She looked up, staring straight into Claire's eyes, her voice hoarse but firm. I know who he is. I don't need you to tell me. Claire laughed, the sound echoing coldly through the luxurious but freezing room. You know, yet you still dream? Do you really think he'll leave his world for you? Wake up, Naomi. He'll tire of you soon enough. And then what will you have left? Naomi stood up, her legs shaking but her eyes never leaving Claire's. I have nothing, so I fear nothing. But there's one thing you don't understand, Claire. No matter how many women he has, he still comes to me, and that you're the one who can't stand, isn't it? The smile vanished from Claire's lips, her eyes darkened. Naomi lowered her head, tears falling silently onto the cold marble floor, her voice choked but unwavering. I know. I'm not worthy of him, but if he wants to be with me, no one has the right to stop it. As this, he says, She turned and walked out of the room, leaving Claire sitting frozen with anger and jealousy stuck in her throat. Naomi stepped out of the building, the cold night wind drying her tears quickly. She looked up at the sky, the distant stars twinkling far above. An aching pain rose in her chest, burning hot and freezing cold at the same time. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan's number. I'm in Cedar Springs, back home. I want you to know, where everything for me began. Naomi stared at the words, her hand trembling uncontrollably. Tears spilled again. Cedar Springs. Where everything began, and where everything ended. She clutched her phone to her chest, closing her eyes, whispering into the cold night air. Ethan, I'm so scared. Scared that if I see you again, I'll never be able to leave you again. Deep inside her, a faint voice called out, desperate and pleading, But I miss you. I miss you so much I can't breathe. Naomi lifted her head, took a deep breath, then turned and walked into the night filled with biting wind. The next morning, Naomi called off her shift, packing a few old clothes into her faded backpack. She stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair and putting a light layer of lipstick over her dry, cracked lips. In the mirror, she saw her own eyes. The same brown eyes that once sparkled with dreams, now clouded with exhaustion and fear. She took a deep breath, whispering, I'm not going for him. I just want to see the place that held my childhood. The Greyhound bus station was crowded in the morning rush. Naomi bought a ticket to Cedar Springs and sat in the last row. The bus left the city, gliding past tall glass buildings reflecting the morning sun, speeding down the highway towards the countryside. She leaned her head against the window, watching the endless cornfields, while the old country songs played softly from the bus radio. Memories flooded back. Afternoons riding bikes with Ethan down red dirt roads, her laughter ringing out, the faint scent of ripening rice in the wind. Ethan, if you're waiting for me there, then please, don't shatter me again. A single tear fell, sliding warm down her cheek. But outside the window, the sun shone brightly over the golden fields, beginning a journey whose end she could not see. The bus stopped at Cedar Springs at noon. Naomi stepped down, her old backpack slung over her shoulder, her worn canvas shoes pressing into the familiar red earth. The countryside breeze blew past, carrying the scent of rice, dry straw, and sunlight tightening her chest. She walked along the village road, past faded wooden fences, past the small grocery store with peeling green paint. Everything looked exactly the same as 20 years ago, only she had changed. At the bend near the hill, Naomi stopped. On top of the hill, under the old oak tree, Ethan stood waiting. He wore a white shirt and dark jeans, the wind ruffling his dark brown hair. When he saw her, he smiled softly, his gray eyes filled with gentle sorrow. Naomi stood frozen, her hand gripping her backpack strap, her heart racing wildly. She couldn't lift her foot. Ethan walked towards her, each step crunching the dry grass. He stopped in front of her, his hoarse voice breaking the silence. "You came, Naomi." Her tears fell, dripping onto the cracked homeland soil, seeping into every old crevice. The ground that had held so many sweet and painful memories of two people no longer whole. Ethan raised his hand, gently touching Naomi's cheek, his fingers trembling. "You're so thin, and still cold like before." Naomi let out a soft sob, pushing his hand away, her voice hoarse. "Don't touch me, you already have everything. Don't take away the last bit of peace I have left." Ethan pressed his lips together, his eyes reddening. He stepped back half a step, taking a deep breath, his voice trembling but firm. "I didn't come to take anything from you. I came to give back." Naomi looked up, her tear-filled brown eyes staring straight at him. "Give back? Ethan, what you took was my youth, my faith, my heart. Can you return that?" Ethan swallowed hard, his voice breaking into a whisper. "I know. But I will spend the rest of my life giving it back. Even if you don't want it, even if you never forgive me, I'll still do it." The wind blew fiercely across the hill, tossing Naomi's long hair, revealing her pale face and deep eyes holding love, fear, pride, and wounds that never healed. Naomi turned away, looking down at the golden rice fields stretching below the hill, her voice soft, blending with the wind. "Do you know how many times I imagined this moment? You standing there, calling my name, and I'd run to you, hugging you so tightly." A tear streamed down her cheeks, falling onto the rustling dry grass. "But now I can't run anymore, Ethan, not anymore, Ethan. 20 years have taken away the legs that once knew how to dream." Ethan clenched his fists, his voice hoarse but resolute. "Then let me run to you. Let me kneel before you, so you never have to take another step again." He knelt down in front of her, his head bowed low, shoulders trembling, his hands clenching on his knees until his veins stood out. Naomi looked at him, her lips trembling, her throat tightening, unable to speak. In that moment, Ethan, the most powerful man in the city, was just the boy from years ago, kneeling under the old oak tree, begging to love again the only woman he had never forgotten. Ethan lifted his head, his teary gray eyes looking straight at Naomi, his voice breaking into pieces with the evening breeze. "Naomi, I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm just asking, don't leave my life ever again." Naomi burst into sobs, her thin shoulders shaking violently. She shook her head, her voice choked. "I'm so scared, Ethan, scared you'll disappear again. Scared these words are just another breeze passing by." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it tightly, his voice hoarse but unwavering. "I swear, Naomi, I won't leave. If you don't believe me, let me stay here where it all began. I'll give up the company, give up everything, just to see you every day." Naomi looked at him, her tear-filled eyes flickering. "You give up everything? For me?" Ethan smiled, a smile full of pain, yet infinitely warm. "Have you forgotten? 20 years ago I told you, to me you were my entire world." The evening wind blew across the hill, rustling the oak leaves. Under the old tree they stood in silence, only their wildly beating hearts echoing across the vast space in unfading memories. Naomi gently pulled her hand from Ethan's grip, stepping back. Her tears still fell, but her voice was weak yet determined. "Don't say these words, Ethan. I can't believe. I just can't." Ethan stood up, pain flashing in his eyes but burning with determination. He stepped closer, his voice firm and unwavering. "Then don't believe my words. Watch my actions. From today, I will stay in Cedar Springs. I'll live here, work here, rebuild everything. In front of you." Naomi froze, her lips trembling. You'd leave your company, leave everything, Just to be here? Ethan smiled softly, a sad but warm smile. I'm not leaving anything behind, Naomi. I'm just coming home. Coming back to where you are. Where my heart has always belonged. She covered her mouth with her hand, a sob escaping uncontrollably. The evening wind howled across the hill, carrying her choked cries and Ethan's hoarse vows across the golden rice fields under the deep red sunset, witnessing the harsh but sacred reunion of two people who had lost each other their whole lives. Naomi sat on the wooden bench under the old oak tree, her red eyes watching Ethan standing a few steps away. He removed his expensive watch, took off his pristine white shirt, revealing a simple gray t-shirt. Ethan looked at the watch in his hand, sighing. This was once my dream, but now all I want is my old dream. You. He placed the watch at the tree's base, looking up at Naomi, his voice hoarse but steady. Tomorrow I'm going to Sam's woodshop to ask for a job. I used to work there when I was 17, remember? Naomi shook her head, tears streaming down. You're crazy, Ethan. You're a CEO. You can't. Ethan walked over, sitting down in front of her, his gray eyes filled with tender pain. I used to be a dirt poor carpenter boy, but back then I was happy, because I saw your smile every day. Naomi covered her mouth, her sobs echoing into the purple dusk. Ethan reached out, holding her hand, his voice breaking. Give me a chance and to live like before. To love you, so without needing to be anyone. Just Ethan, yours. The evening wind whistled through the oak leaves, carrying his desperate plea into the scarred heart of the small girl crying soundlessly before him. Naomi pulled her hand away from Ethan's, her small shoulders trembling violently. She lowered her head, her voice hoarse, like the wind sweeping through rice fields. You don't understand. I'm no longer the Naomi of back then. I've changed. I've learned how to live without you. Ethan looked up, his gray eyes burning with despair and fierce determination. He smiled softly, a bad but warm smile. I know you're strong, but Naomi, no one is born to live alone forever. You may not need me, but I need you to breathe. Naomi broke into tears, covering her mouth, tears streaming endlessly. Ethan reached out, gripping her thin shoulders, his voice breaking but filled with pleading. You can push me away as many times as you want, but I'll always come back. So because this is my home. You are my home. The evening wind blew fiercely across the hill, tossing her long hair to cover her tear-filled eyes. But in that moment, Naomi felt her chest warm. Even just a little, even for a fleeting second, amidst the storm of fear and unquenchable love. Naomi looked up at Ethan, her tearful brown eyes flickering with a faint light. Her voice trembled, soft like the wind through oak leaves. If you stay here, you'll lose everything. Are you sure I'm worth it? Ethan smiled, his gray eyes glistening with unbreakable determination. He wiped her tears away, his hoarse voice breaking into a whisper. Naomi, you're not a sacrifice. You're the reason. She burst into tears, leaning her head against his chest. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her sun-scented hair, his voice shaking with love and sorrow. I'm sorry for leaving you behind, but I promise the rest of my life will be spent making it up to you. The evening wind blew through the oak leaves, the sun sinking behind the purple mountains. In that moment, among the golden fields, two broken hearts found each other again, needing no grand vows, only a trembling whisper truer than anything in this world. You're the reason. That evening, Ethan brought Naomi to the small wooden house at the edge of town, his family's old home. The smell of old pine, sunshine, and earth made Naomi's heart clench. Ethan opened the door, dust swirling in the light, but he smiled, turning to her, his eyes shimmering with hope. I'll fix this place up, every plank, every window, so it's warm enough for you. Naomi looked at him, her eyes red. Her voice was hoarse, breaking. Ethan, I don't deserve this. I'm just a poor janitor. Ethan stepped forward, gripping her thin shoulders, his gaze deep and unwavering. You're not a janitor. You're my Naomi. And this house, it will only be a home if you're in it. Naomi burst into tears, her tears soaking the hand he held against her cheek. But this time she didn't push him away. She closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat echoing in her ear. Outside, the sun was setting, its fiery light bathing the old house, covering the two people holding each other with a warm glow, marking the end of an old story and the quiet beginning of a new one. 1 year later. The small wooden house was now fully renovated. New roof, new floors, White-painted window frames, purple flowers climbing the porch. Naomi brought out 2 cups of hot coffee, placing them on the wooden table Ethan had built himself. He sat there holding his laptop, his gray eyes glowing under the morning sun. Naomi sat opposite him, her brown eyes filled with peace. Ethan closed his laptop, holding her hand, his voice hoarse but steady. I sold all my company shares, opened a wood shop here in town, and I've never been happier. Naomi smiled, tears falling softly. She squeezed his hand, her voice trembling but firm. Me too, Ethan. I don't need the sky. I just need a porch with you waiting for me. Ethan pulled her into his arms, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. Far away, the ripening rice fields bent in the morning breeze, whispering like Mother Earth's song. Time can steal youth, dreams, and faith, but if a heart holds true love, that love will always find its way home. Love as if tomorrow will never come,